just to stick on factivism for a second and go deeper, I think it's incredibly important in the political season that we're in as we march towards another election to be factivists. I'm going to start using your word. And we did this 4 years ago, and we walked through making sure our audience gets vested in understanding who the candidates are, local out, concentric circle approach. So locally in your county, your city, your state, then to national, knowing what the issues are and the key topics and knowing where said persons, forget party lines for a second, just talk about the individuals. What topics are bubbling to the top for you? Where do those individuals stand on the topics? And if they have track records that show they stand where you think they are in those topics, and so on and so forth. So I just want to use your term and the platform you've established around gathering facts to encourage people. We're going to do it again this year, y'all. Get your facts. So Ryan, with that point of facts, give us a understanding of what you've uncovered in terms of what fatherlessness does in America today. I know,
the absence
big question.
of fathers. I mean, it's the devastation is so widespread. I mean, you're talking. Okay, let's just talk from a poverty standpoint. How do we battle poverty? One of the biggest contributors to poverty is the absence of fathers. So when you're talking about 2-parent married homes versus single parent home, which 80% of those single parent homes today in America are female led. And this is not to disparage single moms.
Did you say 80?
80% of the single parent led homes are led by females.
Are led by females. Yeah.
My wife was a single mom for a while. And so we know some of those dynamics.
Yes.
But the reality is you're talking a poverty level that is 5 times higher among single parent led homes versus intact married families. We keep hearing all these social re-engineers talking about how, any family is equal with other families. It's not that a person's worth is less, but all families are not equal. And so when you have those intact married families, they do provide a different environment, a more stable environment. So fatherlessness is devastating on so many levels. Let's talk about high school dropouts. Let's talk about increased violence rates. Let's talk about pregnancy rates. Let's talk about higher abortion rates. I mean, obesity rates, 7 times higher in fatherless homes. I mean, so on nearly every metric, there are negative consequences to fatherlessness. Yet we also hear this rhetoric and this propaganda that fathers aren't needed, and that in particular that Black families aren't as impacted by fatherlessness. That's nonsense. I mean, that was a study that came out from the CDC years ago. The devastation is real. I mean, I've spent many years working with young children on every level who are impacted by the absence of their father. Yeah. And to deny that is really just to deny reality. Well, we do live in a culture right now that denies all kinds of reality. So that it's kind of the norm, unfortunately.
Yeah. And the number, I recall seeing somewhere in the information that you shared and your team shared that number is close to 7 million homes impacted by fatherlessness. Is that right?
I think it's 20 million.
20 million.
It's 20 million. I think it's one out of four children, are impacted by that. And then there are other rates, and you're talking about like unmarried birth rates, the number of children born outside of marriage, and it's devastating. Back in the 60s, it was 25% when a Congressman, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, sounded the alarm that in the Black community it was 25%. Well, you fast forward now and it's over 70%. And it's increased in every people group, and we can't ignore it. I mean, it's devastating on so many levels. How do we raise strong children? How do we raise strong communities? Well, you cannot do it when we have the deterioration. That doesn't mean that, like single parents, I mean, a lot of them do all they can to raise their children, love their children. But mothers weren't meant to be both mothers and fathers.
Right.
And so it's not trying to demean those who do all they can, but that is not the ideal. And we've got an emergency here. I mean, this is an epidemic of fatherlessness that has spread across our nation. And I've seen the toll it's taken on so many of the kids that I work with my peers. And we're a nation that cannot ignore this particular epidemic. We talk about existential threats. This is the existential threat.
Yeah. And with some of those data points, I mean, the numbers are staggering. 1 out of 4 children impacted by it. The exponential or at least multiplier rate of poverty, and to your point, the degradation of health, so on and so forth. Has the data shown that this is correlated or there's causation?
That fatherlessness and poverty,
Yes, and some of these other
causation.
things, causation, surely.
Absolutely
Yeah,
causation. I mean, the
yeah.
socioeconomic impact of a father being out of the home. I mean, if you look at just the salaries for instance, if you have a single male at home, he makes about $51,000 a year. I'm sorry, that's a single female at home. Single male at home is 71,000 versus
Hmm.
a two-parent married household, 107,000. So just from those numbers alone, you're talking there's obviously going to be a socioeconomic impact.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of causation on a number of these factors. I mean, just an involved father, even a father who
Right,
reads more to his children, they're going to have better educational outcomes
right.
just from the mere fact that he's reading to them. And so that's why we have to be attuned to what is going on and this massive absence that is causing these negative ramifications.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, sometimes we talk about problems, we say, something went wrong, and so that's a quote unquote a bug in the program, right? The PC has a bug, and then sometimes you go,
Right.
well, that's not a bug, that's a feature. Okay,
Right.
that's a part of
Right.
a system we have commissioned, right? Actual omission or commission. When you think about this one and kind of turning our attention to how we put people in a position to remedy the situation and walk alongside you on that road, just help us understand from a point of priorities per se, right? What things must we fix to begin turning this around?
We have to fix the way that we talk about what is truly empowering. I mean, we live in a culture right now that things are being empowered, but oftentimes are being fooled by those in power. And
Mm,
part of the being fooled is the nonsense that somehow we need to dismantle. For instance, I'm just going to say it, Black Lives Matter, talking about dismantling the Western Hemisphere's concept of the nuclear family. No, we don't need to dismantle.
mm,
It's being dismantled. It has been for decades and decades, and it's had destructive impact. And so part of it is just rejecting this nonsense that somehow one, women and men are simply interchangeable. They're not. They offer something valuable
mm,
and irreplaceable, each one of them. Um, as someone who was rescued from the violence of abortion, I was conceived and raped, yet I
mm,
was adopted and
sorry.
loved. And so when I talk about the need for fathers to be in this place, this
Mm,
comes from such a deep place, and to see the impact on children. I'm a huge adoption advocate. When I see the dysfunction and the deterioration of families, and what does that child who's in foster care need? They need rescue. They need that stability that a married mom and dad can provide. And that's not to say that single parents cannot adopt. I have friends who are single parents who adopt, and I applaud them too. But we have a situation where we're pretending that fathers don't matter
yeah.
and dads matter. I don't care how they try to restate it. I don't care the euphemism they throw out there.
Hmm.
Dads always matter. And when we realize this and work toward this, for instance, women who are facing unplanned pregnancies, why in the world are we encouraging young men to abandon their responsibility? The moment you become a father is the moment you should be stepping into that
Yeah.
responsibility.
Yeah.
And yet we've created this culture of abandonment, which has allowed 64 million abortions since Roe v. Wade. That is not a way to strengthen a community. The way to
Yeah.
strengthen a community is say, hey, young men, rise up to be fathers. The sad thing is, a lot of them don't have that role model. But yet, there are those of us who can spend the time being that mentor. That's why I
Right.
encourage fathers, hey, take some time, help be a father, and teach a young man how to be that father
Mm,
for his child. I have 4
mm,
kiddos. I have 2
yeah.
girls, 2 boys, and I try everything I can to pour my life into them. I want them to know that I'm giving everything that I have for them, so that they can understand what it means for a father to sacrifice, for a father to be present, for a father to be involved.